Indian billionaire falls in love with a baker at a fair in Mumbai. His sister discovers, and when she tells their parents, they take an unexpected stance. Welcome to Billionaires and Hearts. Before we dive into today's emotional journey, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to stay updated. We'd love to hear your first impressions, so drop a comment below and let us know what you think as you watch. And if you enjoy our stories, please like and share this video with your friends. Now let's get started. The sweetest encounter. The aroma of cardamom and saffron wafted through the bustling Diwali fair in Juhu Beach, Mumbai. Colourful stalls adorned with marigold garlands and twinkling diyas lined the sandy shores, creating a vibrant tapestry of lights against the evening sky. Aryan Malhotra stepped out of his sleek, midnight blue Bentley, immediately feeling out of place among the crowds in his tailored Armani suit. "Sir, should I wait here?" his driver asked, adjusting his white gloves. "No, Rajesh. Take the evening off. I'll call when I need you," Aryan replied, loosening his silk tie. He couldn't explain why he had asked to stop at the fair. Perhaps it was the childhood memories of attending such celebrations with his parents before they became too consumed with their business empire. At 32, Aryan was one of India's youngest billionaires, having expanded his family's technology company, Malhotra Innovations, into international markets. Financial magazines featured him regularly, calling him Mumbai's most eligible bachelor. Women pursued him relentlessly, but Aryan had built walls around his heart, focusing solely on business. As he wandered through the fair, the weight of his recent boardroom battles seemed to lift. The laughter of children, the haggling at stalls, the impromptu dance performances, all reminded him of a simpler life he'd left behind. Then he smelled it. Something distinctive cutting through the medley of fair scents. Something that made his stomach rumble with appreciation. Following his nose, Aryan found himself standing before a modest stall with a hand-painted sign, "Indira's Sweet Treasures." Behind the counter stood a young woman dressed in a simple yet elegant emerald green salwar kameez, her hands working deftly as she crafted intricate jalebi patterns in hot oil. Her face, illuminated by the warm glow of the stall lights, held a serene concentration. A few loose strands of hair had escaped her braid, framing her face as she worked. When she looked up and smiled at a customer, Aryan felt an unexpected jolt in his chest. "Would you like to try something, sir?" Her voice broke through his thoughts. Aryan realized he'd been staring. "Yes, what do you recommend?" "For someone who looks like they've had a long day," she said, her eyes twinkling knowingly, "I would suggest my special Kesar Pista Kulfi. It has a way of making troubles melt away." Aryan was taken aback. Most people treated him with excessive deference or obvious agenda. This woman spoke to him as if he were any other fairgoer. "I'll take your word for it," he said, reaching for his wallet. No, she insisted, handing him the kulfi on a small clay plate, decorated with a pattern of peacocks. "First taste, then pay. I stand by my creations." The kulfi was unlike anything Aryan had tasted before, creamy with the perfect balance of saffron, cardamom, and pistachios. For a moment, he was transported back to his grandmother's kitchen. "This is extraordinary," he said, meaning it. "How did you learn to make this?" "My grandmother's recipes," she replied, her eyes softening. "I'm Indira Bakshi, by the way." "Aryan," he said, deliberately omitting his surname. "Just Aryan." As the evening progressed, Aryan found himself lingering at Indira's stall, watching her interact with customers. Each person received the same genuine attention, from wealthy tourists to local children pooling coins for a treat. When business slowed, they talked. Indira spoke of her small bakery in a modest neighborhood, how she saved for years to open it after her father's unexpected passing. "The fair is good exposure," she explained. "I'm hoping to attract catering orders for the wedding season." Aryan nodded, impressed by her entrepreneurial spirit. "Your products speak for themselves. You should be very proud." As the fair began to wind down, Aryan helped Indira pack up her stall, ignoring her protests. His hands, accustomed to signing multi-crore deals, now carefully wrapped leftover sweets and folded tablecloths. "You're a strange man, just Aryan," Indira said with a playful smile. Most people in suits like yours don't spend their evenings helping street vendors pack up. Most people don't make kulfi that tastes like memories, he countered. Under the moonlight, with the Arabian Sea whispering in the background, Aryan felt something stirring within him, something he'd suppressed for years while climbing the corporate ladder. Indira's authenticity and passion for her craft had pierced through his carefully constructed facade. "Will you be here tomorrow?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Every evening until the fair ends," she replied. "Why? Will you be craving more kulfi?" "Perhaps I'll be craving the company," Aryan answered honestly, surprising himself. Indira's cheeks colored slightly, but her eyes remained steady. "Then perhaps I'll see you tomorrow, just Aryan." As he walked away from the fair, Aryan didn't call his driver. Instead, he strolled along the beach, contemplating the unexpected turn his evening had taken. For the first time in years, tomorrow wasn't about stock prices or board meetings. It was about the possibility of seeing a certain baker with eyes that sparkled when she talked about her grandmother's recipes. Back in his penthouse overlooking the Mumbai skyline, Aryan couldn't shake thoughts of Indira from his mind. He found himself researching small bakeries in Mumbai on his laptop, eventually finding a modest social media page for Indira's sweet treasures. The photos showed the same exquisite attention to detail he'd witnessed at the fair, but on a smaller scale than his world of corporate giants. The next morning, Priya Malhotra burst into her brother's home office without knocking, as was her habit. At 27, Priya was Aryan's only sibling and the company's marketing director. "You missed the conference call with Singapore," she announced, dropping into a chair across from him. "That's not like you." Aryan glanced at his watch and frowned. "I got caught up in something." Priya's eyes narrowed as she noticed the open laptop with Indira's bakery page. "Research for a new investment. A bit small for your usual taste." "Just exploring options," Aryan replied vaguely. Priya studied her brother carefully. "You seem different today. Did something happen at that fair last night?" "Nothing worth mentioning," Aryan said, closing his laptop, but his sister knew him too well. "Now I'm definitely intrigued," Priya said with a mischievous smile. "Oh, it's the last time you had that look was when you convinced the board to expand into renewable energy against everyone's advice." Aryan changed the subject, steering their conversation back to business matters. But throughout the day, his thoughts drifted back to Indira, and he found himself watching the clock, waiting for evening to arrive. As dusk fell, Aryan returned to the fair, this time dressed more casually in jeans and a simple button-down shirt. He spotted Indira's stall immediately. It had a longer queue than the previous night. He waited patiently, observing how she handled the rush with grace and efficiency. When she finally saw him, her face lit up with a smile that made Aryan's heart race unexpectedly. "Just Aryan, you came back?" "I promised I would," he replied, helping himself to a small stool behind her counter. "And it seems your reputation is growing." Indira laughed, a sound that seemed to brighten the entire stall. "A food blogger stopped by this afternoon. Apparently, someone recommended my sweets online. Business has been non-stop since then." What Indira didn't know was that Aryan had arranged for the blogger's visit, having contacted them that morning. It was a small gesture, but seeing her happiness made it worthwhile. As the evening progressed, Aryan found himself drawn deeper into Indira's world. She taught him how to fold samosas, laughing at his clumsy attempts. He told her stories from his travels, carefully editing out details that might reveal his identity. When Indira mentioned her struggle to secure a loan for expanding her bakery, Aryan bit his tongue to stop himself from offering to finance it on the spot. Her independence was clearly important to her, and he respected that. "My mother always said that good things come to those who work with honest hands and a pure heart," Indira said, wiping flour from her fingers. "The expansion will happen when it's meant to." Aryan nodded, thinking of his own parents, teachings about wealth and responsibility. Despite their enormous fortune, they had raised him and Priya to understand the value of hard work and integrity. As the fair closed for the night, Aryan again helped Indira pack up. This time, she insisted on sharing a thermos of masala chai with him. "My special blend," she explained, pouring the fragrant tea into small clay cups. "Perfect end to a busy day." They sat on the now quiet beach, the distant sounds of the fair dismantling behind them, and watched the moonlight dance on the water. In that moment of peaceful simplicity, Aryan felt more content than he had in years of luxury. What neither of them noticed was Priya Malhotra, standing at a distance, watching her brother with wide, disbelieving eyes before silently retreating to her car. Later that night, as Aryan returned home, he found Priya waiting in his living room. "So," she said, arms crossed, "are you going to tell me about the beautiful baker? Or should I pretend I didn't see you sitting on a beach, drinking chai from a thermos like a common man?" Aryan froze, his carefully compartmentalized worlds suddenly colliding. "You followed me. I was concerned when you cancelled our dinner with the Japanese investors," Priya replied. "Aryan, what are you doing? Do you know what would happen if the press saw you like that?" "I'm getting to know someone," Aryan said defensively. "Someone real, who doesn't care about our family name or bank balance." "Because she doesn't know who you are," Priya exclaimed. "How long do you think you can keep up this charade?" Aryan had no answer. The weight of his deception toward Indira suddenly felt enormous. He'd never intended to mislead her, but he'd savored being seen for himself rather than his wealth. "You need to tell her the truth," Priya said, her voice softening, "before she finds out another way." "I will," Aryan promised. "I just need a little more time." Priya sighed, studying her brother's face. "You really like this girl, don't you? I haven't seen you this way since, well, ever." "There's something about her, Priya, something genuine in a world of fakeness." "Ma and Peterji will have to know eventually," Priya warned. "You know how they feel about maintaining the family's position." The mention of their parents sent a wave of anxiety through Aryan. Rajendra and Lakshmi Malhotra had specific expectations for their children's marriages, expectations that typically involved strategic alliances with other business families. "One step at a time," Aryan said, though the path ahead suddenly seemed fraught with complications. After Priya left, Aryan stood on his balcony, gazing at the same moon that had witnessed his moments with Indira. Two worlds were pulling at him, the one he was born into, and the one he'd glimpsed in the simple joy of making sweets with flour-covered hands. Tomorrow, he decided, he would tell Indira the truth. Whatever came after would be what was meant to be, truths unveiled. Morning sunlight filtered through the vast windows of the Malhotra family mansion in Juhu. The sprawling estate, with its manicured gardens and classical Indian architecture blended with modern elements, was a testament to generations of success. In the grand dining room, adorned with paintings by renowned Indian artists, Aryan sat across from his parents, barely touching his breakfast. Rajendra Malhotra, distinguished with salt and pepper hair and sharp eyes that had intimidated countless business rivals, looked up from his newspaper. "The Sharma delegation is arriving next week. Their daughter will be joining them." Aryan knew what his father was implying. The Sharmas owned the largest steel empire in northern India, and an alliance between the families had been discussed in subtle terms for months. "I have other commitments," Aryan replied, avoiding his father's gaze. Lakshmi Malhotra, elegant in a silk sari with her hair in a perfect bun, exchanged glances with her husband. What could be more important than meeting potential business partners, Beta? Before Aryan could respond, Priya entered, dressed impeccably for the office. "Good morning, everyone," she said, kissing her mother's cheek before taking a seat. "Perhaps you can convince your brother about the importance of the Sharma meeting," Rajendra said to his daughter. Priya served herself some fruit before answering carefully. "Aryan has been exploring new ventures recently. He might have insights we haven't considered." Aryan shot his sister a grateful look, though he knew her support was conditional on him being honest with Indira. "New ventures?" Lakshmi inquired. Her interest piqued. "Small businesses with growth potential," Aryan said vaguely. "I'm visiting one today, actually." It wasn't entirely a lie. After much deliberation, Aryan had decided to visit Indira's bakery as himself, no more hiding behind omitted surnames and casual clothing. Last night at the fair, he had asked for her bakery's address, claiming he wanted to see where the magic happened. Indira had written it down on a piece of paper scented with cardamom, her handwriting as delicate and precise as her confections. After breakfast, Aryan changed into a simple but clearly expensive kurta pajama. He opted to drive himself rather than arrive with a chauffeur. One step at a time, he thought. Indira's bakery was nestled in a bustling market area in Bandra, a mid-sized establishment with a cheerful blue facade. The sign Indira's Sweet Treasures hung proudly above the entrance, and through the glass window, Aryan could see Indira instructing a young assistant. Taking a deep breath, he pushed open the door. A small bell announced his arrival, and the scent of freshly baked goods enveloped him. Indira looked up, her face registering surprise and delight. "Just Aryan. You found us." She was dressed in a simple cotton salwar kameez with an apron dusted with flour, her hair tied back in a practical braid. Even in this unadorned state, she was breathtaking. "I told you I would come," he said, suddenly acutely aware of the gap between their worlds. The bakery, though charming, was modest. The equipment was functional, but not state-of-the-art. The display cases showed exquisite sweets, but in limited varieties, nothing like the endless options at the five-star hotels he frequented. Yet, there was something about the space that felt more authentic and alive than any of those establishments. "Let me show you around," Indira said eagerly, wiping her hands on her apron. "This is Meena, my assistant. She's learning the trade and has quite the talent." The young woman, barely out of her teens, gave a shy namaste. "Welcome, sir." Indira led Aryan through the small bakery, showing him the kitchen where 3 more assistants were working, the storage area where ingredients were meticulously organized, and finally to a small office where she handled the accounts. "It's not much," she said, a hint of self-consciousness creeping into her voice for the first time. "But it's mine. Every rupee invested came from my own savings." "It's impressive," Aryan said sincerely. "True success isn't measured by size but by heart, and this place has plenty of that." Indira smiled gratefully. "Would you like to try today's special? We're experimenting with fusion desserts, gulab jamun cheesecake." "How could I refuse?" Aryan said, following her back to the main area. As they sat at a small table by the window, Aryan knew the moment had come. "Indira, there's something I need to tell you." She looked up from serving the dessert, her eyes curious. "That sounds serious." "My name is Aryan Malhotra," he said, watching her face carefully. "Of Malhotra Innovations." Indira's hand froze mid-air, the dessert spoon suspended. "The Malhotra Innovations, the tech giant." Aryan nodded, his throat suddenly dry. "I should have been honest from the beginning. I just enjoyed being seen as just a person, not a portfolio." Indira set down the spoon, her expression unreadable. "So all this time, you've been—" "The same person you met at the fair," Aryan said quickly, "just with details omitted." "Rather significant details," Indira replied, her voice cooling. "I feel foolish now, serving homemade chai in clay cups to one of India's richest men." "That chai was one of the best things I've ever tasted," Aryan insisted. "Indira, nothing has changed about who I am when I'm with you. But everything has changed about how I see this." She gestured between them. "What was this to you? Slumming it with a common baker, a charming diversion from your world of wealth?" "No." Aryan leaned forward, desperate to make her understand, and it was real, is real. For the first time in years, I felt like myself, not the persona I have to maintain. Indira studied him, her eyes conflicted. "I need time to process this. It's a lot to take in." Before Aryan could respond, the bell above the door jingled again. To his horror, a group of paparazzi burst in, cameras flashing. "Mr. Malhotra, is this a new investment? Are you dating the owner? What would your parents say about this liaison?" Indira's face paled as the realization of who Aryan truly was became even more concrete. The photographers continued snapping pictures, capturing her shock and Aryan's dismay. "Please leave," Aryan commanded, standing protectively in front of Indira. "This is a private establishment." After several tense moments and more unauthorized photos, the paparazzi retreated, but the damage was done. Customers in the bakery were murmuring, some taking pictures with their phones. Indira's staff stood frozen, uncertain how to proceed. "I should go," Aryan said quietly to Indira. "I'm sorry for the intrusion. This is exactly what I was trying to avoid." "Is it?" Indira asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Or was the secrecy more about keeping me separate from your real life?" The question hit Aryan like a physical blow. Before he could formulate a response, his phone rang, his father's ringtone. News travelled fast in Mumbai's elite circles. "I need to answer this," he said apologetically. Indira nodded, her professional mask sliding back into place. "Of course, you should attend to your real life, Mr. Malhotra." The formal address stung worse than any rebuke. Aryan stepped outside to take the call, watching through the window as Indira calmly addressed her staff and customers, restoring order to her sanctuary that he had disrupted. "Aryan," his father's voice was controlled but cold, "there are photographs of you at some bakery in Bandra circulating on social media. Explain." "It's a potential investment," Aryan lied, hating himself for it. "Is that all?" Rajendra pressed. "The way you're looking at the owner suggests otherwise." "We'll discuss this at home," Aryan said, ending the call before his father could object. By the time he looked back into the bakery, Indira had disappeared into the kitchen. After a moment's hesitation, Aryan left, knowing that pushing for resolution now would only make things worse. That evening, the Malhotra mansion was tense. Rajendra and Lakshmi sat in the formal living room, the day's newspaper open to a business section with a hastily printed photo of Aryan and Indira at the bakery. "A baker," Lakshmi said as soon as Aryan entered. "Is this what you meant by exploring new ventures?" "Her name is Indira Bakshi," Aryan said, deciding that honesty was the only path forward. "And yes, I've been spending time with her." "The Bakshis from Delhi?" Rajendra inquired, searching for a connection to a family of status. "No, Pitaji. Her father was a school teacher who passed away. She built her business from nothing." Rajendra's expression hardened. "Aryan, you are the heir to Malhotra Innovations. Your choices reflect on all of us, on the legacy we've built." "She's extraordinary," Aryan insisted. "Talented, hard-working, independent, and completely unsuitable," Lakshmi interrupted. "What would she know of our world, of the responsibilities you bear, of the social circles we move in? Perhaps it's our world that could learn something from hers," Aryan countered, surprising himself with his boldness. The sound of the front door opening interrupted the tense exchange. Priya walked in, her expression serious. "I just saw the photos online. It's everywhere." "Your brother seems to think this dalliance is worth risking our family's reputation," Rajendra informed her. Priya looked at Aryan, then at her parents. "Have you even met her? Talked to her?" "Why would we need to?" Lakshmi asked, genuinely perplexed. "Because she matters to Aryan," Priya said simply. "And I've seen them together. There's something real there." Silence fell over the room. Aryan looked at his sister with gratitude, while his parents exchanged glances of confusion and concern. "I want to invite her to dinner," Aryan said, seizing the moment. "Let her speak for herself before you judge her." "This is highly irregular," Rajendra said, shaking his head. "Please, Peter G," Aryan pressed. "I want dinner. If you still object afterward, I'll reconsider." After a long moment, Rajendra nodded curtly. "One dinner, tomorrow night." As his parents left the room, Aryan turned to Priya. "Thank you for defending me. But why?" Priya smiled softly. "Because I saw how you look at her. It's how Ma and Pitaji used to look at each other before business consumed everything." Aryan blinked in surprise. Their parents' marriage had always seemed so formal, so proper. "Really?" "They were a love match too, you know," Priya revealed. "Grandpa opposed it initially. Ma's family had status, but little money left. They had to fight for their chance." This revelation shifted something in Aryan's understanding. Perhaps there was hope after all. The next morning, Aryan went back to Indira's bakery, determined to make things right. However, a closed-for-the-day sign hung on the door. Through the window, he could see the space was empty. Worried, he called the bakery's number, which went directly to voicemail. Finally, he wrote a note explaining everything, his feelings, the dinner invitation, his hopes, and slipped it under the door. Throughout the day, Aryan checked his phone obsessively, but no call came. As evening approached, he resigned himself to facing his parents alone, to explaining Indira's absence. Just as the family was gathering in the dining room, the doorbell rang. The butler appeared moments later. Miss Indira Bakshi has arrived, sir. Aryan's heart leapt as Indira entered. She was dressed in a simple but elegant silk sari in deep blue, her hair arranged in a neat bun adorned with a single jasmine flower. She carried herself with quiet dignity, though Aryan could see the nervousness in her eyes. "Namaste," she greeted, touching her palms together and bowing slightly to Aryan's parents. "Thank you for inviting me to your home." Lakshmi and Rajendra exchanged surprised glances at her poise. "Welcome, Miss Bakshi," Rajendra said formally. As they moved to the dining table, Aryan managed to whisper to Indira, "You came." "I almost didn't," she admitted softly. "But then I thought of what my father always said, never make important decisions from a place of fear." The dinner began awkwardly, with stilted conversation about the weather and general news. Then Lakshmi, ever the proper hostess, asked Indira about her bakery. Something in Indira's demeanor changed as she spoke about her passion. Her eyes lit up, her voice grew confident, and she articulated her vision for bridging traditional Indian sweets with modern techniques. Even Rajendra seemed grudgingly interested in her business model. "And your family?" Lakshmi inquired. "What do they think of your endeavors?" "My mother passed when I was young," Indira explained. "My father raised me alone. He taught literature at a local college and instilled in me a love for our cultural heritage. He always encouraged me to pursue my dreams, regardless of convention." "A noble sentiment," Rajendra said, though his tone suggested he found it impractical. "Yes," Indira agreed, meeting his gaze, "but one I believe in deeply. True worth comes from character and action, not circumstance of birth." The table fell silent. Aryan held his breath, worried she had gone too far. Then, unexpectedly, Lakshmi spoke. "My father was a textile merchant," she said. "When I married into the Malhotra family, many thought I wasn't suitable, that I wouldn't understand the responsibilities of such a position." Rajendra reached for his wife's hand, a gesture of intimacy rarely displayed. "And yet, she proved to be the backbone of our success. Her perspective from outside our circle brought fresh ideas." Aryan and Priya exchanged shocked glances. Never had they heard this story from their parents. "Sometimes," Lakshmi continued, looking directly at Indira, "it takes courage to welcome someone new, to recognize quality that doesn't come with a pedigree." The tension in the room subtly shifted. It wasn't acceptance, not yet, but it was the beginning of possibility. After dinner, Indira graciously thanked the Malhotras for their hospitality. "I understand your concerns about my place in your son's life. I share them. Our worlds are very different. But I know who I am and what I can offer. Integrity, hard work, and genuine care. The rest is for time to determine." As Aryan walked Indira to her waiting taxi, his heart full of contradictory emotions, she turned to him. "I'm still processing everything," she said honestly. "The secrecy, the revelation, the scrutiny that comes with your world. I need to decide if I'm willing to step into that spotlight. And I need to determine if I'm worthy of someone as authentic as you," Aryan replied. "But I'd like the chance to try." Indira smiled, a small but genuine expression that gave Aryan hope. "The fair continues for 3 more nights. I'll be there, as promised." As the taxi drove away, Aryan stood watching until it disappeared from sight. When he returned inside, his parents were waiting. "Tashi has remarkable character," Lakshmi admitted, "but there would be significant challenges. The Sharma alliance would be much simpler," Rajendra added. "Since when have the Malhotras chosen the simpler path?" Aryan challenged. "You built an empire by taking calculated risks on things you believed in. That's all I'm asking for. The chance to follow something I believe in." Rajendra studied his son for a long moment. "You truly care for this girl?" "I do," Aryan confirmed. "More than I thought possible." His parents exchanged a look heavy with unspoken communication, the kind that comes from years of partnership. "Then we will watch and wait," Rajendra finally said. "But remember, Aryan, caring is not enough for a lasting union. There must be understanding, compromise, and shared vision." "And respect," Lakshmi added, "on both sides." Aryan nodded, understanding the wisdom in their caution even as he chafed against it. "Thank you for giving her a chance." Later that night, Priya found Aryan on the terrace, looking out at the Mumbai skyline. "That went better than expected," she observed. "Did it?" Aryan asked. "They haven't exactly given their blessing." "For our parents, not immediately opposing is practically a ringing endorsement," Priya laughed. "Besides, did you see Ma's face when Indira explained the historical significance of her fusion desserts? I think she was actually impressed." Aryan smiled, remembering that moment. "There's still a long way to go. Indira herself isn't sure about all this. Then show her it's worth it," Priya advised. "Or it's not with grand gestures or expensive gifts, but by proving you understand her world as much as you want her to understand yours." As the moon rose higher in the sky, Aryan contemplated his sister's words. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with potential obstacles from both families and society. But for the first time since he'd met Indira, he felt a glimmer of genuine hope. Tomorrow, he would return to the fair, not as just Aryan or as the billionaire heir, but as himself, a man hoping to build a bridge between two worlds. Two worlds. One heart. The Diwali fair glowed with even more vibrancy as Aryan made his way through the crowds. This time, he noticed details he had previously overlooked. The artisans who had traveled from distant villages to showcase generations of craftsmanship, the elderly couples enjoying kulfi with the same delight as children, the careful economy with which the vendors managed their resources. This was Indira's world, authentic, resourceful, grounded in tradition, yet embracing life's simple joys. As he approached her stall, Aryan saw Indira instructing a young assistant on the perfect consistency for gulab jamun syrup. She wore a simple cotton salwar kameez in marigold yellow that complemented her warm complexion. When she spotted him, her expression revealed a complex mixture of emotions, wariness, lingering hurt, but also a hesitant welcome. "You came," she said, echoing his words from the previous night. "Like I promised I would," Aryan replied, conscious of the curious glances from nearby vendors who had recognized him from the news coverage. Indira gestured to her assistant to take over and led Aryan to a quieter corner of her stall. "I've been thinking about everything," she began, her voice firm despite the vulnerability in her eyes. "Sign about why you concealed your identity, about the dinner with your parents, about what this all means." Aryan waited, giving her the space to express her thoughts fully. "I understand why you didn't tell me immediately," she continued. "The weight of your name, the expectations it carries, but relationships, real ones, need honesty at their foundation." "You're right," Aryan acknowledged. "I should have trusted you with the truth sooner. I was afraid of losing the connection we had, afraid you'd see the name and not the person." Indira's expression softened slightly. "And I understand that fear. Since those photographs appeared, my bakery has been flooded with curious onlookers. Some come for the sweets, but most come hoping to glimpse Malhotra's baker girl, as if I've become an exhibit." Guilt washed over Aryan. "I never wanted to disrupt your life." "Life disrupts itself sometimes," Indira said with unexpected wisdom. "The question is whether what follows is worth the turbulence." Before Aryan could respond, an elderly woman approached Indira's stall. "Beta, are you the same baker from the news? The one who makes traditional sweets?" Indira straightened her shoulders, professional pride overtaking personal concerns. "Yes, Mataji. What can I offer you today?" The woman smiled, revealing stained teeth and deep wrinkles. "My grandson is getting married next month. His bride is modern, studying in America, but he wants traditional sweets for the wedding. Can you help an old woman respect both tradition and the modern world?" Indira's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. "Absolutely. I specialize in bridging those worlds." She guided the woman through options, suggesting traditional laddus with a subtle contemporary twist, rasmalai in elegant new presentations, and barfi infused with unexpected but harmonious flavors. Aryan watched Indira work, noticing how she listened attentively to the woman's needs, offering suggestions without imposing, honoring the importance of the occasion. By the end, the old woman was beaming, placing a substantial order and blessing Indira profusely. After the woman left, Indira turned back to Aryan. "Sorry about that." "Don't apologize," he said sincerely. "Watching you work, Seeing your passion and respect for both tradition and innovation, it reminds me of why I was drawn to you from the beginning." Indira's cheeks colored slightly at the compliment. "Your parents were surprisingly civil last night." "They surprised me too," Aryan admitted. "I think they saw in you what I see, someone extraordinary, regardless of background." "They have concerns, though," Indira noted. "Valid ones." "As do you," Aryan acknowledged. "Will you give me a chance to address them? Not with words, but with actions." Indira studied him for a long moment before nodding. "How do you propose to do that?" Aryan gestured to the bustling fair around them. "By learning your world, as you've glimpsed mine, not as a tourist, but as a participant." Indira's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You want to work at the fair?" "If you'll teach me," Aryan said, removing his designer watch and rolling up his sleeves in demonstration of his seriousness. A small smile played at the corners of Indira's mouth. "Here's the great Aryan Malhotra, selling sweets at a Diwali fair. The business magazines would have a field day." "Let them," Aryan said with newfound conviction. "I'm more interested in what you think." For the remainder of the evening, Aryan worked alongside Indira at her stall. His initial clumsiness gradually gave way to increased competence as he learned to package sweets, make change, and even assist with simple preparations. The customers, some recognizing him, others oblivious, received the same respectful service from the billionaire that they did from Indira herself. As the night progressed, Aryan gained new insights into Indira's daily reality. He witnessed her careful calculations to minimize waste, her genuine interactions with regular customers whose names and preferences she remembered, and the physical toll of standing for hours while maintaining a cheerful demeanor. When the fair finally closed for the night, Aryan's back ached and his feet throbbed, but his heart felt lighter than it had in years. He helped Indira pack up with newfound appreciation for the effort involved. "You surprised me tonight," Indira admitted as they finished. "I didn't expect you to stick with it when the crowds came." "I learned more in these few hours than in a dozen board meetings," Aryan said. "About real value, about connecting with people directly affected by your work." Indira nodded, understanding the deeper meaning behind his words. "And what will you do with these insights tomorrow, when you return to your boardrooms and balance sheets?" "Carry them with me," Aryan said simply. "Let them inform how I lead and the decisions I make." They walked together along the now quiet beach, the moon casting a silver path across the water. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with new understanding rather than tension. "My father would have liked you," Indira said suddenly, "not because of your wealth, but because you were willing to step outside your comfort zone to learn something new." Aryan felt honored by the comparison. "Tell me about him." As they strolled, Indira shared stories of her father, his dedication to his students, his love of literature, his unwavering support of her dreams, even when neighbors questioned the propriety of a young woman running a business alone. In turn, Aryan spoke of his own family beyond their public image, his mother's secret passion for classical dance, his father's collection of vintage cricket memorabilia, Priya's childhood dream of becoming an astronaut. When they finally parted ways, something fundamental had shifted between them. The barriers of class and circumstance hadn't disappeared, but they had become more permeable, less defining. "Will you come again tomorrow?" Indira asked. "Try to keep me away," Aryan replied, his smile reflecting in her eyes. Over the next 2 days, Aryan continued working at Indira's stall, each session strengthening their bond. Word spread about the unusual situation, drawing media attention that initially concerned Indira, but ultimately benefited her business as curious visitors became genuine customers, won over by the quality of her products. On the final night of the fair, as they cleaned up the stall for the last time, Aryan noticed Indira's wistful expression. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different tomorrow will be," she replied. "Back to the bakery, back to normal life. No more billionaires selling jalebis at my stall." Aryan took her hand gently. "The fair may be ending, but this, us, doesn't have to." "Doesn't it?" Indira asked, vulnerability breaking through her usual composure. "Tomorrow, you'll return to board meetings and international conferences. I'll be managing inventory and training assistants. Our paths will naturally diverge. Only if we let them, Aryan insisted. Indira, these past days have shown me that what we have is worth fighting for, worth adjusting my life for. I would never ask you to give up who you are, Indira said firmly. Your work is important, your responsibilities significant. As are yours, Aryan acknowledged. I'm not suggesting either of us abandon our paths, but rather that we find ways to walk them side by side. Indira's expression remained uncertain. It sounds simple when you say it like that. Not simple, Aryan corrected. Challenging, complex, requiring effort from both of us, but possible, if we want it enough. Back at the Malhotra mansion later that night, Aryan found his father in his study, reviewing documents despite the late hour. You've been in the papers again, Rayenda noted without looking up. Serving sweets at a fair. The board members have questions. Let them question, Aryan said, pouring himself a small measure of his father's premium whiskey before sitting down. I've learned more about consumer behavior and resource management in 3 days at that fair than in the last 3 executive retreats. Rajendra finally looked up, studying his son with shrewd eyes. This isn't just about business lessons. No, Aryan admitted. It's about Indira, about understanding her world as she's been asked to understand ours. Rajendra sipped his own drink thoughtfully. Your mother and I have been talking. About the girl, about what we observed at dinner. Aryan tensed, preparing for opposition. She has exceptional character, Rajendra continued, surprising Aryan. There's her resilience in building something from nothing, her commitment to preserving tradition while embracing innovation. These are qualities we value in the Malhotra family. Aryan could hardly believe what he was hearing. Are you saying you approve? I'm saying we recognize her worth, Rajendra clarified. The path you're considering won't be easy. Society will talk. Business associates will question. Cultural differences will create challenges. But if you truly believe she is the one, if you are willing to put in the work required, we will not stand in your way. Emotion welled in Aryan's throat. Thank you, Pitaji. Your support means everything. Rajendra nodded, his expression softening slightly. Your mother reminded me of our own beginning, of the obstacles we overcame. Sometimes the most worthwhile journeys begin with the steepest climbs. The next morning, Aryan visited Indira's bakery, finding it busier than ever following the publicity from the fair. He waited patiently until she could take a break, then asked if they could speak privately. In her small office, surrounded by recipe books and neat stacks of invoices, Aryan took both her hands in his. I've been thinking about what you said, about our worlds being so different, he began. You're right, they are, but I don't see that as an obstacle anymore. I see it as an opportunity. Indira listened, her eyes reflecting cautious hope. Your world has taught me about authenticity, about creating something meaningful with your own hands, Aryan continued. My world can offer resources, connections, possibilities. Together, we could build something greater than either of us could alone. What exactly are you proposing? Indira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Instead of answering directly, Aryan reached into his pocket and withdrew a small, handcrafted wooden box. This belonged to my grandmother. She was from a small village in Gujarat before she married into the family. He opened the box to reveal a ring with a modest but exquisite diamond set in traditional gold filigree work. She made my grandfather promise that this would go to the first son who found a love worth fighting for, regardless of what society might say. Indira's eyes widened as she understood the significance. I'm not asking for an immediate answer, Aryan clarified. I know we still have much to learn about each other, many challenges to navigate, but I am asking if you're willing to begin that journey together, officially, to face whatever comes as partners. Tears glimmered in Indira's eyes. Aryan, A commotion from the front of the bakery interrupted her. They emerged from the office to find Lakshmi Malhotra standing in the middle of the shop, observing everything with keen eyes, while bakery staff hovered nervously. Hey, mother, Aryan said, surprised. What brings you here? Lakshmi turned, her elegant sari and perfect posture creating an immediate contrast with the humble surroundings. I wanted to see for myself what has captured my son's heart so completely. Indira stepped forward, touching her palms together in respectful greeting. "Mrs. Malhotra, welcome to my bakery. May I offer you something? Perhaps some chai?" "Actually," Lakshmi said, her expression unreadable, "I was hoping you might show me your kitchen. I understand your fusion desserts are quite innovative." Indira exchanged a quick glance with Aryan before nodding. "Of course, please follow me." Aryan watched anxiously as Indira led his mother through the bakery, explaining her methods, introducing her staff, and answering questions with growing confidence. To his surprise, Lakshmi appeared genuinely interested, asking detailed questions about techniques and even rolling up her sleeves to try folding a samosa under Indira's guidance. After nearly an hour, the two women emerged from the kitchen, Lakshmi carrying a small box of assorted sweets. "Your father will want to try these," she explained to Aryan. Then, turning to Indira, "You have created something remarkable here. Your father would be proud." Indira's eyes glistened at the mention of her father. "Thank you, Mrs. Malhotra. That means a great deal to me." "Lakshmi," Aryan's mother corrected with a small smile, "I think we can dispense with formalities, given the circumstances." After Lakshmi departed, promising to speak with Aryan later, Indira turned to him with astonishment. "Did that really just happen?" "I think my mother just gave her approval," Aryan said, equally surprised. "In her own way." Indira took a deep breath, then looked at the ring box still clutched in Aryan's hand. "Before we were interrupted, I was about to say something." Aryan's heart beat faster. "And what was that?" "That I love you," Indira said simply. "Not the billionaire or the business heir, but the man who helped me pack up my stall every night, who treated my elderly customers with respect, who sees value in what I've built here." She took the box from his hand and opened it, admiring the ring inside. "If you're sure, if you understand that I need to maintain my independence, that I want to grow my business through my own efforts, then yes, I would be honored to begin this journey with you." Joy, unlike anything Aryan had ever known, surged through him. "I understand, and I wouldn't want you any other way. Your spirit, your determination, they're part of why I love you." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, the small bakery erupted in cheers. The staff, who had been pretending not to eavesdrop, rushed forward with congratulations. News traveled quickly through the market, with neighboring shop owners stopping by to express their good wishes. In the days that followed, Aryan and Indira navigated their new status as an engaged couple under the scrutiny of both their worlds. They visited the temple together to receive blessings, a moment captured by photographers, but nonetheless sacred in its sincerity. The business community buzzed with speculation about the unlikely match, but Aryan handled questions with diplomatic firmness, making it clear that his choice was made from strength, not caprice. Indira, for her part, continued running her bakery with the same dedication as before, refusing special treatment or shortcuts, despite her elevated status. A month later, as preparations for their engagement ceremony began, Indira was invited to the Malhotra mansion for a family dinner. This time, she arrived not as a nervous guest, but as a welcomed addition to the family. Priya greeted her with a warm embrace, presenting her with a beautiful silk sari for the ceremony. "It belonged to our grandmother," Priya explained, "the same one whose ring you wear. She believed in maintaining tradition while embracing new beginnings, like you." During dinner, Rajendra raised his glass in a toast to Aryan and Indira, whose union reminds us that true wealth comes in many forms. May your partnership bring prosperity not measured in rupees, but in happiness, understanding and shared purpose. Later that evening, as Aryan and Indira strolled through the mansion's garden, she paused to admire the stars above Mumbai's skyline. "A few weeks ago, I could never have imagined being here like this," she confessed. "It felt like an impossible leap between our worlds." Aryan squeezed her hand gently. Perhaps they were never truly separate worlds, just different perspectives on the same one. Indira smiled, the moonlight highlighting the contentment in her expression. "Your parents have been surprisingly supportive. They recognized what I saw in you," Aryan said. "That same spirit that built our family legacy generations ago. Determination, integrity, vision. And what did you see in me, that first night at the fair? Indira asked, curious. Aryan thought for a moment. Authenticity. In a world where everything can be bought, you offered something genuine, something that couldn't be acquired with wealth or influence. You reminded me of what matters beyond balance sheets and business strategies. And you, Indira replied, showed me that not all dreams have limits, that sometimes the heart recognizes its match, regardless of circumstance. As they continued their walk, planning their future together, one that would respect both their individual paths and their shared journey, Aryan reflected on the twisting road that had led them here. From a chance encounter at a Diwali fair to breaking barriers of class and expectation, their story had unfolded in ways neither could have predicted. Yet in the end, it wasn't about a billionaire falling for a baker, or about bridging different social worlds. It was simply about two people who found in each other something essential, something worth fighting for, a love authentic enough to transform both their lives and, perhaps in small but meaningful ways, the world around them. In the distance, the lights of Mumbai twinkled like stars fallen to earth, a fitting backdrop for a love story that had defied convention to find its own unique harmony. And in the garden of the Malhotra mansion, surrounded by generations of tradition now evolving with their union, Aryan and Indira sealed their promise with a kiss that tasted of possibility, of a future written not by circumstance, but by choice. Thank you for watching this heart-stirring story. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below telling me what you thought of the story. Also, click on the video appearing on your screen to continue the journey with us. See you in the next story.